It's a great opportunity to meet here today, also to celebrate the anniversary of our organization. As you've already heard in the various introductory words, there are many influences of school gardening, and a lot has been mentioned, but I would also like to look at it from another angle. And I would also mention the health aspect as far as gardening is concerned and well-being. Maybe we've got some time later on for a debate, but I would like to give my presentation first. So let me start. So I've already given you a brief introduction. I would like to tell you about the effects of gardening, of school gardening, and many will be also gardening at home, what you do next to your actual work, to experience gardening and garden as a place to experience nature and also as the source of well-being. Lately, I read in a publication in the World Health Organization, and in about 30 years' time, about 70% of the world population will live in cities. And city life is going to have a major impact on health, which might not be necessarily positive. But in order to feel fine, to feel healthy, we need a green environment. We need to be in touch with nature. And hence our school gardens or all the green spaces that we have in schools, they have a particular impact. And we as friends of school gardens and teachers, we assume a particular responsibility to make sure that we have these places, and we must create awareness for the health and well-being of our children. So I would like to explain it further in my presentation here at University of Rostock. We did some research, and I would like to show you what can be achieved by experiencing nature in a garden, in gardens, and what kind of impact it has on health. I divided my presentation into the following parts. Initially, I'm going to tell you something about nature and gardening and well-being and health, then the impact of nature on health. And we've also got a lot of research, a lot of studies. Most of you in Europe might have heard about some of these studies about this research. But I would also like to tell you about our very own research at the University of Rostock. That means saying seeing green spaces makes you feel cheerful. So the background is the general educational context. What does it mean to experience nature as such? Because we very briefly assume that as soon as we're outdoors, we get in touch with nature. But if you look at the definition in a literature, then it says experience of nature is a specific process of human interaction with the living environment, which includes, living environment, but this specific definition has been specified. We had a group who was particularly looking at nature, but actual experience nature if it includes specific activities and also if you talk about it. So there needs to be a linguistic reflection, interaction. And this is what we can do in school gardens. We are on site with their students. We're not just outside and use it as the garden at the background, but they're working in the garden, their activities pertaining to gardening, and we talk about it. That means when you look at gardens, these are places where we can experience nature. But of course, it can also mean that we are interacting with nature, but especially with sensual, with emotional experience. So to experience nature means, so in the general public, it's something nice, that's something we need to promote. But if you work with children, with students, with young people, you need to, these emotions do not necessarily be positive. They can be scared, they find things disgusting. And as teachers, we need to be aware of this. There is also another level, that is being in contact with nature. So without any other ideas, that is where the human, where we as human beings are observing nature. So if we want to use school gardens in education, then it also need to be aware that we need to create, to start experience with nature, but that there are different levels of this experience. And as soon as we create this general awareness, we can enhance this awareness. So there are various publications. They have been published in over the last few years, which are becoming more and more prominent, more and more frequently quoted. You might have heard Kaplan and Kaplan or Ulrich or Barton and Pretty. So these are the well-known names and representatives. I've also got my sources at the end of my presentation. This is the theoretical background. So you try and understand, why do we experience nature? Or how does it, what's the impact on nature? So situational awareness. So also there's another theory that we always very often use as our basis and has become more and more accepted. But at the back end, there's also Ulrich Geppert, a particular publication that probably most of you will know. This is also about nature and young people. And also a colleague there's another publication by a colleague, and I'm talking about this research as well. We're cooperative as well. So the effect of nature onto health and well-being can be considered from two angles. So on the one hand, we need to be aware that nature as such has an effect, an impact on human beings, and but this impact can only be achieved if we talk about this experience, if we are aware of this experience. And basing myself on studies, I can say a level of awareness need to be created in order to achieve this effect onto our bodies, and also to have a positive effect, so that nature can have a positive effect on our physical being. And now there's something specific that I would like to bring up as far as the impact of nature on health and well-being is concerned. I would like to go back to empirical research in that respect. So on the one hand, we can say that direct effects created by nature is in the physical sense, and indirect effects. What does that mean more specifically in that context? So direct biophysical effect can be created, let's say, if we're taking a walk in the woods. All of you who has studied biology at university, has got a biology degree, might have learned about the effects of forests, of wooded areas, woodland areas. And obviously there's also the effect that forests, that woods filter air and make sure that, let's say, in the summer, we're going for a walk, we can feel the clearer air, the pure air. So the air is clearer, light is much better, and especially air quality is greatly improved. This is not something that we can just feel, but it can also be proven, which can actually be measured, which is measurable. And if you're looking at woodland areas, if you're looking at the effects, if you're looking at the immediate biophysical impact, it can be proven that health of the respiratory system can be minimized, and people who live close to wooded areas clearly have a lower incidence of respiratory diseases. There's another direct biophysical effect if we are looking in an urban area with no green at all. We're talking about these urban islands of heat, where deprived of any green, that air particles would be prominent. So that means there's a greater level of pollution. So which means we can look at these front gardens without any greenery, without any shrubs or plants. You would only have some stones and maybe one single tree. That would be in those front gardens. You would find one single tree only, no general shrubbery or plants. And obviously, here you can feel a negative impact, which we're calling is the urban heat island impact. So that means people are more prone to various diseases, coronary heart diseases, headaches, exhaustion, cardiovascular diseases, and this is not an effect that we want to achieve. But if we're not careful and prevent such islands of emerging, we need to do something about it. And which brings me to the indirect impact of nature to health. You probably heard about it as you're all school gardeners. I took a picture of a beach. When young people, when children, when you take them to the beach, to the outdoors, we can observe the following. They start moving straight away to jump around, run around, and we can see the same effect in with children in school gardens, that they love to move around. And this is another major effect of nature onto health. It makes you jump about, it makes you want to move around. And that means that it reduces obesity, diabetes, and also it promotes mental health. So the effect of being outdoors has got an immediate effect on our state of health. There's another effect which we also know is the mental effect. That means it reduces stress. So we become down, we feel this need to touch plants. It's not, and I've taken this particular picture of a new herb garden. You just want to touch the rosemary, let's say, curry plants or lavender, take some lavender, put it into your pocket, because it has got the specific effect on us when seeing these plants. It has got this calming effect. And if you see green shrubs, green plants, it reduces the level of stress. There's also another indirect effect with nature onto health, is that diseases are reduced, especially if you lead a sedentary lifestyle. There's a photo of myself. I also have a very sedentary lifestyle, and I use every opportunity to go outdoors, to be outside in the open air, and in order to combat such potential diseases from arising. So my summary would be of part one. So we've got empirical evidence which shows that experiencing nature, and especially being aware of nature, communicating with nature, has an impact onto our state of health. And this actually is, if we want to promote a good state of health in our schools, we should also make sure that we can take the young people outside to experience nature. So in the second part of my presentation, I would like to go about and tell you about the specific features pertaining to children and young people. So when we look at nature and health, we can see that diseases, developmental disorders, allergies, lack of exercise, attention deficit disorder, stress levels are diseases that we already find in children. And I also studied PE at university, and 80% of children did not move. Even some years ago, it was proven that children in general do not move around enough, don't do enough physical exercise. So we should do everything to promote physical exercise of children. And we should also use school gardens for this purpose. We should also be aware of this. What can be achieved if we have school gardens for young people and children? So I would like to give you some more empirical research. And I would also like to show what others have done in this respect. I already mentioned Barton and Pretty, this particular study. We did in 2010, we did this huge study, and we looked at the effect of nature, and we did a summary of this particular study. I myself did that summary, and we asked ourselves the question, what is the best doses of nature? And in accordance of Barton and Pretty, so the duration is quite good, because even short-term stays in nature even is very positive, or long-term. So if you are outside for a whole day, either you can use the gardens with in short duration, just spending 5 minutes in them, or all day long. As far as the intensity is concerned, it can be we can either aim at very high or very low intensity of stay. And the habitat, it doesn't matter where you are in nature, whether you're in a garden, in a park, or in a woodland area. This effect can be observed everything, and preferably near water. I went to another meeting, another conference, and this was also studying about the effect, and they talked about green care and blue care at this other conference. So the effect of water on this is also studied in landscaping, and there's also an attempt to make sure that more water can be present in urban areas. So also, as far as men and women are concerned, the effect applies to both. Effect of nature, more or less. And as far as age, the spread of age is concerned, so we can see children and young people particularly benefit from contact with nature, and also particularly mentally ill patients. So I mentioned we also need to. Sometimes we're faced with mentally ill students, and this is another effect. So nature has also a very beneficial effect on that. So we're looking also at other studies at the University of Rostock about the effect of nature on our state of health.
And then the question is, how can we tell if somebody is fit and healthy? And there's a definition, and it tells it's about the physical and mental well-being, and also the social well-being. And well-being is a term that's always connected and related to healthcare and health. And it's also related to one's own self-confidence. So the more a person says themselves that they are feeling well and confident, the better they are. So the better your confidence, the better your health. And there is a way to measure that. There's the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. And here you can also see another definition of self-esteem. It's the subjective evaluation of the subjective image of one's own personality. Here, there's a questionnaire for the self-esteem. It's a tool from psychotherapy, and it delivers very reliable results. However, this questionnaire has only been tested for adults, and that's why we used it for our students. And I'd like to present the results of one of these tests. We did a study within a course that's called Experimental School Biology. And the question is, does school gardening have an impact on the students' self-esteem. They were aged between 19 and 28 years. We had 36 students, and it was 3 courses with 12 students each who went to our school garden. They studied different subjects, all to be teachers. So what did we do? This course is carried out during the summer term in our garden. And the students work with the plants that they seed out themselves. Here you can see a student who looked up the plants, also has a model, and she learns about the background, the ecological backgrounds, and then we carry out experiments with these materials. We watch the plants. On number 2 in the bottom right corner, you see pictures from another experiment with invertebrates. Here as well, you can see photos from these experiments. And then we do an evaluation, and then everybody has to take care of their beds. We spend 3 hours in the garden, and then before that and after that, we fill in a questionnaire, and you can see that there is a difference. The red bars are from before the seminar, and the gray bars are from after the class. When we evaluated this, we did wonder why there's such a stark difference. Sorry, that was the wrong button. I also framed these bars, and it's significant difference in between the 2 groups. That might be due to the lecturer, because one group has the lecturer A and B, and the other group has lecturer C. But as you can see, the difference is already high in the first lesson, and that's probably not due to the lecturer. However, what we think is the explanation is that on the one side, it's students to be teachers in secondary school, and on the other side, it's elementary school. So there is a significant difference, but you can see that students training to be elementary school teachers also benefit from school gardening. Here again, significant difference in between before and afterwards. And that's a very interesting result. It shows us what's happening on the side just by working in the garden. Thanks to this experience, thanks to doing something hands-on, their self-esteem did improve. And looking back at the definition of health, we can tell that it actually does something with these people and it makes them healthier. Second summary here. So the question is, does school gardening have an impact on the student's self-esteem? And the answer is yes. However, this is only based on this group, but it is a sign that what we do and what we do with pupils and students can have a positive impact on health and self-esteem. Now I'd like to present a second study that we carried out within a certificate course, which is called Making Ecological School Gardens and Use Them for Learning. It also includes teachers and lecturers. And again, the question was, does school gardening have an impact on the participants' well-being? And here you can see a course. We had 23 participants, then 13 in brackets, 13 participants took part in all courses, and we only used their data. We took measurements at 6 points. We used a different tool. We used heart rate, because the heart rate is a simple objective criterion for stress. And we were asking how this effort of doing gardening impacts the students. And the extent of this effort is in the stress is a sign of how they feel. So if the heart rate is lower, that's a good sign. If it stays the same, it's a good sign. But if it increases over a long period of time, it's not a good sign. So everybody received
nutzt und wir haben dann die Daten entsprechend ausgewertet. Und in der
and everybody was wearing them. So this is a summary of the data as we got them. Then obviously we had to analyze them and interpret them. And in summary, we can say that everything that's green here, and that's based on 13 participants who took part in all sessions. Green means that the heart rate decreased during a constant activity or even an increase in activity. And then there were also a few participants whose heart rate increased, but that's not a big proportion. Now here some data. All participants chose an animal's name to be anonymous. And here you can see how the heart rate decreased when activity increased. And that was during the period of time that they spent with us. And also, if on the right-hand side, the heart rate didn't change, even though the activity decreased and then increased. At the beginning, we have some time to arrive so that everybody gets familiar with the topic. We also did a mindfulness session at the beginning. Then, of course, we also asked the participants some questions. Here, a short summary of this study. A question: does school gardening have an impact on the participants' self-esteem? And we can say yes for most of the participants. And that's quite a surprising result. Even though they were physically active, they dug up the ground, they cleared up the beds afterwards. So it did affect the heart rate, but in a positive way, because most participants' heart rate decreased, and there was even a training effect. Now I'll soon come to an end, and I'd just like to show you our school garden, university garden. You can see some photos, and you all know how important it is to also harvest together, spend time together. And each and every one of these sessions, and that's been shown, that's been proven, does something with us, and we should really use every square meter that we have at school, at home, and we should try and spend as much time as possible outside, even if it's just a small pond in your school garden. It will have a particularly good effect on everybody's health. Here, a photo of our university school garden in Rostock, and that's my colleague, Miss Pauline. As I already told you, she's very engaged in that area. She's soon going to finish her PhD, and she's already published something, and her PhD was about the effect of school gardening on the social and emotional competences of students. Feel free to read her results or contact my colleague. These are the publications that I quoted. If you're interested, please feel free to contact me and I can send you the list. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all a wonderful remainder of the meeting.